Before you ever saw London in 1750, you would have smelled it. Long before the rooftops appeared, the wind would reach you first, carrying something thick, sour, and rotten. And that smell? That was London saying hello. Because the city you're about to walk into is not the London of clean stone, red buses, and postcard streets. This is a living, breathing, dangerous animal. 750,000 people crushed into a few square miles, with no proper sewers, almost no reliable street lighting, and absolutely no guarantee that something filthy wouldn't land on your head. Most people imagine the past as quiet, slower, simpler. That is the first thing you need to forget, because walking down a single London street in 1750 wasn't peaceful at all. It was a skill, a strategy. Sometimes it was survival. People actually wrote instruction manuals on how to walk through the city without getting injured, robbed, splashed, crushed, or killed. So today, we're going to take that walk, not the polished version, the real one ascent at a time, the ground under your feet, the stench in your lungs, the noise that never stops, the dangers above you, beside you, and below you. And then night falls, and that is when London becomes something else entirely. Let's start where every walk starts, the ground. Look down. You're standing on uneven pebbles and gravel laid straight onto bare soil with no proper foundation underneath. All day, heavy wagons and coaches grind over it, churning the street into what people at the time called dirt and mire. One careless step could twist your ankle. One bad patch could throw you straight into the muck. The poet John Gay literally warned walkers to wear well-hammered soles. But the pebbles are not the real problem. This is. Running down the middle of the street is an open channel called the kennel. It is supposed to drain rainwater. In reality, it is the city's open sewer. Everything liquid, foul, and unwanted ends up there. Wastewater, slop, rot, whatever people throw from houses, shops, and yards, and every passing carriage can flick it straight up at your clothes, your face, your mouth. So here's where the street turns into a battlefield. There is only one relatively safe place to walk, the narrow strip of pavement pressed right against the buildings. It is the driest ground, the furthest point from the splashing wheels, the closest thing you have to protection. They called it taking the wall, and people fought over it. Getting the wall meant staying cleaner. Losing it meant being sprayed with filth. So this tiny strip of pavement became a daily contest of a status, manners, and nerve. Who steps aside, who refuses, who shoves, who pretends not to see you. Gay's famous poem, Trivia, written in 1716 and is still known in 1750, even laid out the etiquette. You hold the wall against the arrogant fop in red-heeled shoes, but you give it to the elderly, the blind, or the woman carrying a baby. That is the part people miss. Walking was not just moving from one place to another. It was a performance, a negotiation, a small social war, fought one step at a time, and once your feet are finally steady, you make the mistake of breathing in. Here's the thing about that smell from the beginning. It wasn't one smell, it was layers. London did not stink in one direction. It attacked you from everywhere. The worst industries were pushed toward the edges of the city, and for good reason. Cross into Bermondsey and you entered what people called the land of leather, the tanning district. To turn animal hides into leather, tanners soaked them in urine, lime, and dog dung. They collected it, paid for it, used it by the cartload. The result was a brutal mixture of rotting flesh, chemicals, soaked hides, waste, and a smoke. A stench strong enough to hang in the air for miles. But here's the problem. Leaving Bermondsey did not mean escaping it, because right next door, they were boiling soap. And soap in 1750 did not mean clean, fresh, pleasant-smelling bars on a shelf. It meant animal fat, rancid, rotting fat, melted down and boiled with caustic lye. The smell was so vile that neighbors dragged soap boilers into court. One in Lambeth was officially branded a pestiferous nuisance for throwing a dreadful stench across the river. And speaking of the river, the Thames was where everything eventually went. Human waste, industrial runoff, blood, chemicals, rot. The city's unwanted leftovers all found their way into the water. On a hot day, the riverbanks would ferment. The water rolled past not like a clean river, but like a thick, visible mass of filth. And this is the part that really lands. Even your own home did not save you. Private toilets were almost unheard of. In one building, 85 people shared just 3. Most people relied on cesspits dug dangerously close to the walls, close enough that sewage could soak through the brickwork and rot the timber from the inside. And emptying a chamber pot? Many people still did it the simplest way possible. They threw it out the window so that a smell from the start of the video, you're not passing through it anymore. You're living inside it, every breath. And after all that, the next part almost feels like relief until you realize it never stops. Close your eyes for a second, and London tells you exactly what it is, through sound. There was no ordinary advertising the way we know it now, no flashing signs, no loudspeakers, no screens. So the city sold itself by shouting. These were the famous cries of London, and they were not just random yelling. They were melodies, rhythms, trade secrets, calls passed down through families shaped to cut through the roar of the street. A newcomer would be stunned by it. The day might open with the bellman calling the hour. Then came the milk sellers, the fruit sellers, the pie sellers. Fine Seville oranges, hot eel pies. The cries changed with the seasons. Strawberries in summer, oysters in winter. And deep in the night, when most of the city had vanished behind doors and shutters, the watchman's voice drifted through the dark. Past 3 o'clock, and a cold, frosty morning, it sounds almost poetic, but standing there, surrounded by it, it would not feel poetic. It would feel endless, because underneath all those human voices was the machine of the city itself. Ironclad wheels grinding over a stone, coachmen shouting, horses snorting, church bells ringing constantly, metal hooves, bells, wheels, voices, all crashing together. The noise could be so intense that shopkeepers struggled to hold a conversation indoors. And then there were the animals, everywhere, because just outside the city walls sat Smithfield, the great livestock market, and the numbers are almost hard to believe. Well over 1 million sheep and tens of thousands of cattle were driven through London's streets every year, on foot, through the crowd, all the way from places as far away as Devon. And that brings us to the part that could actually kill you. These animals did not arrive calm. They arrived exhausted, terrified, thirsty, and half mad after long journeys. Then they were forced into packed, narrow streets full of people, carts, shop fronts, noise, and chaos. Bulls broke loose, horses bolted, cattle panicked. Newspapers reported it almost like bad weather. Pedestrians gored, people trampled, shop windows smashed by a charging bull. You were not a tourist watching a market. You were an obstacle in a stampede. And even the milk people drank carried that same urban ugliness. Cows were kept in cellars, cramped yards, and filthy spaces in the middle of the city. They were often fed leftover grain mash from breweries. The conditions damaged their bodies, and the milk they produced came out thin and bluish. So sellers adulterated it just to make it look like milk. But the danger was not only on the ground. Now look up. Above every shop, heavy signboards hung over the street on iron brackets. There were no street numbers, so London ran on symbols. 3 squirrels, a sugar loaf, 3 coffins, a golden boot, a black horse. The signs helped people find places in a city without addresses. But as shops changed hands and signs stayed where they were, the meanings became strange. You could end up with a coffin maker trading under 3 coffins and a sugar loaf, simply because a grocer had once lived there. Charming, until you remember how heavy these things were. In strong wind they creaked, they swung, they groaned above the heads of everyone below. And in 1718, on Bride Street, one of them tore loose, collapsed into the street, ripped part of the shop front with it, and killed 4 people. It took until the 1760s for the law to finally control them. So let's count what London has thrown at you so far. Filth under your feet, stench in your lungs, noise you cannot escape, animals that can crush you, signs that can fall from the sky, and then the sun goes down. This is the part nobody is ready for. We are so used to light that we forget what real darkness is. London in 1750 had almost no reliable public lighting. A law from 1716 ordered householders to hang 1 light outside between 6 and 11 at night. But these were dim horn lanterns, burning fish oil or animal fat. And honestly, the fuel often smelled stronger than it glowed. After 11, the city fell into something much closer to total darkness. Not romantic darkness, not soft darkness, ink black, disorienting, dangerous darkness. So how did anyone get home? You hired a child. They were called link boys, young street boys carrying a link, a torch made of rushes dipped in pitch and fat. For a farthing, one would light your path through the dark. It sounds practical until you understand the catch. You could not fully trust the boy holding your only light. Link boys had a reputation for working the gangs. Lead a stranger down the right dark alley, slow down at the right corner, disappear at the right moment, and let the robbers do the rest. You were paying someone to guide you, never completely sure whether he was guiding you home or into an ambush. And you can still find the proof of that fear today. Some grand old houses near St. Paul's still have little metal cones on their gates. They were called snuffers. That is where the link boy put out his torch once you reached your door. A small iron survivor from a time when light itself was something you bought from a stranger in the dark. So that was the walk. You smelled London before you saw it. You fought for clean ground. You stepped around open sewage. You breathed in tanneries, soapworks, cesspits, and the river. You listened to a city that never stopped shouting. You dodged cattle, horses, wheels, mud, signboards, and thieves. And when night came, even light became a gamble. This was not a quaint, sleepy past. London in 1750 was loud, filthy, brilliant, crowded, and genuinely dangerous. A city where simply walking down the street demanded all 5 senses all the time, and somehow Inside all that mud, smoke, noise, hunger, trade, fear, and invention, the modern world was being built. That is the thing about history. It is never as polished as the paintings make it look. It is stranger, dirtier, more brutal, more alive. And if you want to keep stepping into the world as it actually was, not the cleaned up version, not the museum version, but the real past beneath the surface, that is exactly what we do here. So let's stay close, because there is a lot more of the real past waiting in the dark